Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Lynnwood City Council business meeting of Monday, May 23rd at 2026 at 6 p.m. And let's see, we're going to have a flag salute. Who's leading that? Do we know? Councilmember Partial. And Councilmember Wright is going to read the land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that the city of Lynnwood is located on the traditional lands of the Snohomish people and the Confederation of Tulalip tribes and their families. For generations, these indigenous communities have lived on this land, and we recognize, support, and advocate alongside them. We also acknowledge the forced removal of indigenous communities from their homelands as a result of the 1855 Treaty of Point Elliott. We understand that the land acknowledgements are only the first step in our efforts to support Coast Salish tribes and educate non-natives about their lived history. We strive to achieve this through building relationships with indigenous communities, supporting indigenous commerce, government-to-government partnerships, and lifting indigenous voices to create equity for all. Through these actions, we hope not to only pay respect to the past, but also collaborate in creating a sustainable future, hand in hand with the first protectors of our shared environment.
All right, thank you. Council Executive Assistant, let's do a roll call.
Mayor Hurst.
I'm here, thank you.
Council President Coelho.
Here.
Council Vice President Escamilla.
Here.
Councilmember Lutweiler.
Here.
Councilmember Mata.
Here.
Councilmember Owings.
Present.
Councilmember Partial.
Ready.
Councilmember Wright.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. For messages from the mayor, just a couple of things. Last week with the Police Chief Langdon, I met with the new administrator for CMAR services at the Community Crisis Center. This has been a long time coming, and it's exciting that soon that facility will be open for needed services within our community. Also, just on a personal note, on March 26th, Thursday, at the Lynnwood Neighborhood Center is the State of the City address and presentation. The doors are going to open at 9 a.m. and then we'll go on for probably an hour with the program starting at 10. So looking forward to all community members to attend. Thank you. So do we have any written communications and or petitions, City Clerk?
We do. We have two comments. A resident raised concerns about billing practices by Public Services, asking the council to work with a company to improve billing transparency and ensure customers are charged fairly. And an individual submitted comments to the council supporting a proposal related to youth activity funding and local parks in Everett and surrounding cities. He also urged that these funds not be used for a separate city project.
All right, thank you. Now is the time for public comments, and I'm going to read our little rules of procedure. So the public comment segment of our agenda provides an opportunity for community members to give their comments to the mayor and council members. In accordance and compliance with RCW 42.30.240, individuals who wish to give public comment via Zoom have to be registered. Did anybody register, by the way? No. Yes, but not for Zoom. You're here in person. Not yet, sir. Not yet. Thank you. Thank you. That's okay. We're here to listen to your comments, and there will be no response or debate with you. Comments should be related to the City of Lynnwood or agenda items only. You may also provide comments through the city website at lynnwood.gov. We have set aside 30 minutes for individuals to have an opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes each. First, we will call on those who signed up to speak on the list outside of council chambers here at City Hall. After that, we will call on anyone present that did not sign up prior to the meeting but wish to speak in person. Individuals providing comment must not disrupt or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of the meeting. This is not a forum for hate speech, and it will not be tolerated. People seeking to use this forum for that purpose will have their mic turned off and be removed from the meeting. We ask that the audience refrain from clapping, cheering, or booing. Comments for the purpose of assisting a campaign for election or any person to any office or for promotion of or opposition to any ballot proposition are not allowed. When you're called upon to speak, please come to the podium, confirm the microphone is on, then state your name and zip code for the record and make your comments. When your 3 minutes are complete, you'll be prompted to conclude your remarks. If you do not conclude your remarks after 3 minutes, the chair may ask for your mic to be turned off. But thank you in advance for taking the time to share your comments with us. All right, I have a list of folks who have signed up to speak. The first person is Mr. John Martin. Please come forward. Thank you.
Check, check. Is on? My name is John Martin, and I live in Mount Lake Terrace, 98043. I'm here tonight with the Youth Activity Account Resolution of the City of Lynnwood proposal, and you should all have copies of that. I think I'll start at the end because it says, the proposal says, we encourage the City of Everett Council to find new means to fund the new professional stadium in downtown Everett other than funds from the Youth Activity Account. Now, the Youth Activity Account was started in 1997 by Paul Allen with a $10 million donation, and it was clearly defined for parks and baseball fields for kids. In 2023, the legislature changed that, and you have some things that I've handed out, and they said, well, you know, parks are also professional parks, so they took, I think, $40 million or $25 million out of that fund, and they used it for Cheney Field and a field in Spokane and 5 different semi-professional major minor league baseball teams all across the state. And in 2024, they changed the law again. Somebody named Robinson is head of the Ways and Means Committee from District 38, happens to be where the stadium is that she changed, that said, well, we don't really have to fix the stadiums. We can build new stadiums. So that's what they're doing. They're taking that park money and they're building a brand new stadium for professional sports that benefits the billionaire owners of the Seattle Mariners and the Aqua Sox. Their name is John Stanton and Tom Volpe. They're the ones who benefit, and they're going to use tax dollars to do it. And how this relates to you is, well, let's see. Whereas parks funded by the Youth Activity Account in Lynnwood includes South Lynnwood Park and Meadowdale Playfields. This is the resolution. Whereas citizens of Lynnwood helped create the PAC plan to provide goals and an action plan for providing park and recreational services. This is out of your comprehensive plan. Whereas citizens of Lynnwood share parks funded with the Youth Activity Account throughout the community, including Evergreen Playfield and tennis courts in Mount Lake Terrace, and Edmonds Civic Center Playfield, and the Meadowdale Beach Park in Edmonds. So this is all about your parks and money that should be your money to benefit all of the parks around the state. But I'm not asking you to really do anything politically dangerous. I'm just asking you to say, we encourage the City of Everett to find new means to fund the new professional stadium in downtown Everett other than funds from the Youth Activity Account. Because then that money goes back into the RC, Recreation and Communication Department, that funds all the things. And they have $7.4 million, which could be used for 25 park projects throughout the state. So the long and short of it is, I'm asking you simply to say, dear Everett, please don't use that money for professional baseball stadiums. Put it back in the account and let it be used for parks. And I encourage you to review it, and you all have handouts, and there's a lot to this. I encourage you to review it and support and introduce the resolution tonight and pass it. That's what I'd like you to do.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Next on the list is Philip Lipson.
Hello. I'm Philip Lipson, 98036 Lynnwood. I read recently about an event called City Pride, and about celebrating love, inclusion, and community with us. Why did you not include us? Why did you not include Lynnwood Pride in the planning or consulting? We're very upset about that. In 2024, we had a wonderful event, over 500 people. A lot of the city council people were there. We had Marco Elias and several senators. And we need to clarify whether Lynnwood Pride was not consulted or invited to any of the planning for this. We're a little bit upset about that. And City Pride claims it's the first inaugural event. We were the first event, the first Pride ever. And we'd like a retraction and a correction of saying that City Pride is the first. We're happy we have City Pride, but you are not the first. And we're a little bit upset that you did not consult us about that. And so we're asking for a retraction, and we're also a little upset that we were not included in the Lynnwood Pride, Lynnwood newsletter about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the list is Charlotte Lefevre.
If you can hear me, my name is Charlotte Lefevre. Some of you may know me from previous city council meetings. Not only am I director and founder of Lynnwood Pride, but also of Capitol Hill Pride. This past year, we've been busy doing 50-51 movement rallies and No King rallies. And I would like to remind everybody, obviously, how Lynnwood Pride was formed. Back in 2023, there was a alt-right rally at the Lynnwood Event Center. This was incredibly disturbing and appalling to sit there and see. And it was it was an incident for us that really underlined that Lynnwood did need a pride organization. Now, I want to sit there and again remind, for those of you who were there 2 years ago, as my partner and colleague is informed, is we spent a lot of our efforts and everything into supporting the community. So we are incredibly disappointed that Lynnwood, City of Lynnwood, appears to be creating another event without even the common courtesy of contacting us. As you recall, last year, there was an attempt to raise the pride flag at Wilcox Park. And back then, last year, a couple of you may realize you were at our meeting where we put in a request to be able to raise a pride flag in Lynnwood's Wilcox Park, which is a flag park. It has a public flagpole. And so I'd like to request to every single city council person here and remind you to look and revisit our request and to please give us the courtesy and decency of a response back. And I would like a response back this week, if possible. It is to our dismay that this pride flag was removed, and we would like that flag returned. And so again, please check your emails. Please give us the decency and respect of responding to our requests. And we hope to hear back from you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ted Heigl.
Ted Heichel, 98036. Tonight you're asked to approve an ordinance, quote, to improve implementation of development regulations. The gist of this action is to allow more multifamily buildings to be built in a zone NC, neighborhood commercial, that was meant to protect small businesses that were established before they were incorporated within the city. If they were damaged by fire, flood, or whatever, they could not be rebuilt. But in this era of build more housing everywhere, the city staff proposes to add apartment buildings as a new designation for allowable structures in the neighborhood commercial zone. Not just a single floor of apartments over the store, 3 more stories, a 4-story building covering 90% of the lot, with only 10-foot setbacks on the interior lines, a 45-foot high building. What could be wrong with that? Before you vote yes, let me plead the case of the single-family homeowner who lives next door or whose house backs up to the NC property. Let me draw you a picture of the future for that homeowner. It's a warm, sunny evening in July. A great time to have a barbecue for family and friends. As they arrive, they're greeted by a few dozen onlookers peering into your backyard from the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor apartments located just 10 feet from your backyard barbecue. What are you grilling tonight? Is it salmon or a barbecue of hamburgers? Hey, we're the next door neighbors. Don't we have the right to invade your homeowner's privacy? After all, the City Council approved a zoning change in that ordinance. That is your choice tonight. The chance to protect or the chance to take away the right of privacy for residents who pay taxes and believe the City Council is here not only to provide more housing opportunities, but also to protect their domestic tranquility in their own backyard. And by the way, that 45-foot building prevents any sunshine from falling in that backyard. Not taking away any of the expectations they had when they invested in Lynnwood buying their home, why are you now trying to take it away? If you take away the rights of the rich and the powerful, they will send their lawyers and take you to court. If you take away the rights and protections of average homeowners, you add to the cynical view that pervades America, that pervades our city, that the government only serves those who have the money and the influence. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to make a comment? Seeing no one, we will close public comment and go on to council comments. Let's start with Councilmember Mata.
Okay. I don't have too much to say this week, but I do want to, I think, respond to a couple of the comments. I'm really excited that Lynnwood is putting on a Pride event this year. It's something that has been a long time coming. I know last year there were a lot of issues about how the city wasn't doing anything for Pride, and so I think it's exciting that the city is putting time and energy into this. The DEI Commission is kind of heading up some of this along with our events director, but I will speak to them this week and I will make sure that you get a response and that you're included, because you have done some really amazing work for the Lynnwood queer community. And the fact that you feel left out of the conversation is an injustice, and I will do what I can to bring you in to collaborate on this. I haven't been a part of any of the planning yet thus far, but knowing your concerns, I will respond to you and reach out this week and try to work with you on that. There's a lot going on in the world, so I think I just wanted to take this time as council and everybody in here just to remind you that what's going on in the world, what's going on in social media makes things feel a lot worse than they actually are here in our city. So talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends. Just know that we're all trying to have the same goal, which is live in safety, live in peace. And the more that we can work together to do that, the better off we will be. So I guess I just wanted to use my time to remind you all that we're okay. We are safe in this moment. And that's, a win I'm going to take. So thank you.
All right. Council President Coelho.
I feel like a few people got skipped over, but all right. I know. I'm just teasing. So I just want to, John Martin, I will be reviewing the materials you gave. I'll try and give a response soon. As far as Lynnwood Pride goes, I believe that was being planned internally. But as Councilmember Mata says, we will review the information, speak to those involved, and try and get a response back soon. As far as the Pride flag goes, I'm just going down this list now. My recollection was that the kerfuffle had to do with a lack of a coherent flag policy. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know what happened with that. And so this is a really great launching point for us to go into that, and I appreciate you bringing that up today. So we'll talk about that in our meeting tomorrow, Mayor. I had a little funny story, but I'm going to just cut it short. I was on the phone with the IRS for 2 hours today, so my mind's a little gooey. That's it for now. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. Council Vice President.
Thank you, Mayor. First and foremost, I wanted to thank everybody that came up for public comments tonight. I, too, was going to comment towards our Lynnwood Pride organization as to, I'm not sure why or why not, but I would inquire now. You've heard from council. I know we're at the very beginning stages, but I can't see why they wouldn't have you be involved in the planning moving forward. I also just wanted to remind the community also of the excitement of our State of the City that the mayor will be doing on Thursday. And from there, I will be zooming over to Edmonds College for an event that they have called Avanzando. And it is for our Hispanic students. And what they do is they bring in adults to panel like a career fair, similar to the Students of Color career fair that's been happening at Everett Community College. So I'm really excited about that. And the last thing I wanted to mention or do was give our police department and fire and EMT some massive kudos. I just happened to be traversing through the Alderwood Mall area this weekend, and I was maybe 5 seconds from a terrible 2 or 3 car accident where a family flipped over on Alderwood Mall Parkway and Alderwood Mall Boulevard. I got to the intersection and there was community. I can't even tell you, there was probably over 20 people that jumped out of their cars from every portion of the intersection and even down there by the Lynnwood Kids Dentist. I got to the light and was like, I don't hear sirens, so the only thing that I could do was to call 911. And while I was on the phone with them, within that 10 seconds, the first officer arrived. And just to see, one, the community jump in and try to get the people and the kids out of that car. It was on its hood. It was an SUV. And how fast our police officers get there. And I saw them, and I witnessed the whole thing. I just wanted to give everybody kudos, and I hope that everyone is okay. I want to follow up. We don't follow up, I just so happened to be there and witness that response. And then honestly, it took what seemed like an eternity for the EMT and the fire to get there, but the police were there so fast in securing the scene and helping and blocking all the way down from across from Best Buy. And I mean, it's not an incident to really talk about any infrastructure, but it really paralyzed that entire region. I was just trying to go to do a return at Nordstrom Rack and ended up having to go all the way around through Mount Lake Terrace. And so that's where that, eventually if we ever get it, that Poplar Bridge popped in my mind. I know, silly. But anyways, kudos to all emergency response. It was really something to witness, and I hope everyone is okay.
Councilmember Partial.
Thank you. I do want to make the community aware of a couple things coming up. Speaking of baseball, very excited. Mariners opening day is on Thursday this week, and that is a night game, 7 o'clock in Seattle. So I expect a big crowd for that one again. We're going to be similar to maybe the Seahawks parade that we had here a couple months ago. So keep in mind that parking garage at Lynnwood isn't going to clear out in time for you to go to the Mariners game early. So I would encourage everyone to use other forms of transport to get to the Lynnwood Transit Center. Use a bus, use your bike, use your feet, use an Uber, use a Lyft, use a zip car to come to Lynnwood on that day. And yeah, be careful where you park. Last time, as a reminder, we had some trouble with people parking in like actual private apartment complexes and those things, and some of those cars did end up towed. So Mariners are back, and it's going to be busy at the Lynnwood Transit Center, so check those times and explore those alternate options. And then speaking of transportation, I would say very exciting for the entire region, the 2-line, the Cross Lake connection of Sound Transit will be opening on Saturday. First train will run at 10 a.m., so it kind of really marks that moment where Sound Transit becomes truly a regional network. You'll be able to go from Lynnwood across the lake, beautiful views, and get all the way to Redmond without using your car at all. So that's really exciting. Pay attention to what train you're getting on at the Lynnwood station going forward. There will be blue lines going one way and green lines going another, or 1 and 2 going the other way, but all trains will be very clearly marked. There's a lot of good signage there at the station, really easy to use. So I'm excited about that coming up on Saturday. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. Do want to acknowledge the public comments that were given today. Thank you for taking the time. I sat on the DEI Commission last year when the last year kerbuckle happened. So I am thankful that Councilperson Mata is going to be able to bring you into the fold for City Pride that's coming up. I do want to make aware again, on Sunday, March 29th at Heritage Park, there's a free presentation, Living Voices. I sit on the History and Heritage Board, and I'm very excited to attend this. It's Living Voices, and it's going to tell the stories of working women in World War II aeronautics industry. Again, it's a free event from 1 to 2:30 at Heritage Park, and I hope to see you there.
Councilmember Owens.
Hey, I don't have much to say. I do want to extend an appreciation to everybody that took the time to make a public comment and share what you express your feelings and everything going forward. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to say, so thank you.
All right, and then finally, Councilmember Luteweather.
No comments tonight, thank you.
All right. Then we will move on to approval of minutes. It looks like Council Vice President is in charge of that.
Does any council member have any changes to the minutes? If not, I move to approve the minutes of the February 9th, 2026 City Council business meeting, the March 2nd, 2026 City Council work session, the March 9th, 2026 City Council business meeting, and the March 16th, 2026 City Council work session.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the unanimous consent agenda, and Councilmember Leutwiler will handle that. Thank you.
Does any council member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? If not, the following will be approved by unanimous consent. A, authorize the mayor to enter into and execute on behalf of the city a supplement to an existing contract with Bertite Incorporated for construction management and construction administration services related to the 44th Avenue West underpass pedestrian and bicycle improvements in an amount not to exceed a total contract value of $840,000, including a management reserve of $74,000. Item B, voucher approval. 1, approved claims in the amount of $1,508,707.27 for the period of March 2nd, 2026 through March 15th, 2026. Item 2, approved payroll in the amount of $1,774,799.46 dated March 6, 2026.
Great, thank you. Since this is unanimous consent items, those are approved as read. So let's move on to business items, which is business item 11A, Ordinance Unified Development Code Miscellaneous Updates 2. So we have, looks like, Carl Ungram, who is our Community Planning Manager, to speak to these.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Before you tonight is an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Code just to help support our implementation of the code. It does not increase any density that's already permitted. All of that was already conducted by the City Council back in June of 2025. Vast majority of the changes before you are really to help implement our staff understanding of the council's intentions, as well as help respond to some of the questions that have come up from the development community to assist our permitting timelines. There are 2 changes before the council that I'd like to bring up tonight. One is on line 10, the word chapter is omitted, as well as on line 45, the date March 9th, 2026 is to be filled in. If the council would consider that amendment with the motion, staff would greatly appreciate that, and staff's available for any other questions.
Are there any questions by council members? Councilmember Leutwiler?
I was going to make a motion and just clarify the corrections that you talked about can be addressed through our current language.
Yes.
Okay.
As Councilmember Leutwiler reminded me with the question, there was a small typo change of a repeated word. I forget exactly where that was. Staff did make that correction prior to it being included in the ordinance, so that was resolved.
Okay. Interim City Clerk, can I have an ordinance number?
Ordinance number 3507.
I move to adopt Ordinance 3507, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lynnwood, Washington, adopting miscellaneous amendments to the Lynnwood Municipal Code, including Chapter 1.12, Notices Posting, Chapter 1.40, Code Enforcement, Chapter 8.20, Street and Neighborhood Design, Chapter 8.30, Sub-Areas and Zoning Districts, Chapter 8.35, Use Regulations, Chapter 8.40, Development Standards, Chapter 8.90, Administration and Permit Processes, Chapter 8.99, Definitions, and Title 21, Zoning, providing for severability, establishing an effective date, and providing for summary publication.
Second.
So we have a motion and seconded. Councilmember Leutwiler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do not.
Any other comments by council members? Councilmember Mata.
I just want to address Mr. Heichel's concerns about the ordinance, about the update. I want you to understand that I hear what your concerns are. Lack of privacy, buildings blocking light. I think everything is hypothetical at this point because the cost to build is so high. Most people aren't actually doing any of these projects right now, but I do want to acknowledge the problem and the questions that you're raising, and I'm hoping as we go about getting permits in and people doing some of these projects, we can figure out how people are actually building, what are the implications on these properties, and really start to figure out how we can problem solve in a way that allows us to build more housing, but also maintains your right to have, what was the language that you used? Domestic tranquility. I think that it's important. I want you to help you protect your peace. I think we need to approve this, but I hear you. So thank you for coming and speaking.
Any other comments? Since this is an ordinance, let's do a roll call, please.
Council President Coelho,
Yes.
Councilmember Lutweiler,
Yes.
Council Vice President Escamilla,
Yes.
Councilmember Partial,
Yes.
Councilmember Mata,
Yes.
Councilmember Wright,
Yes.
Councilmember Owings,
Yes.
7 yeses, 0 noes.
It seems to have passed. Very good. Thank you. All right. Thank you, sir. We'll go on to item 11B, a briefing on the Youth Council progress. And Kelly Shooter of Recreation Superintendent will be in front of us to give, there you are, to give us the briefing. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. That's pronounced Shooty, just so you know. Kelly Shooty. I'm excited to share an update on the development of our Youth Council. The mission of the Youth Council is to empower young leaders with a voice in their community, fostering belonging, equity, and purpose through leadership, civic engagement, and collaboration. We are creating an inclusive platform where youth are not only heard, but are equipped to drive positive change. Next slide. To give you an overview of how we got here, in August of 2025, City Council passed the ordinance establishing the Youth Council. By September, the program was placed under Parks and Recreation, and I was chosen as the staff liaison along with our team program director, Lisa Wagenthal. In January of this year, Council Vice President Escamilla was selected as the council liaison, with Councilmember Mata serving as the alternate. The four of us have been working together to ensure that this launch is a success. Next slide. You can imagine we have put a lot of work in behind the scenes. We've developed a dedicated webpage, created marketing materials in print and for social media, and an email outreach through the Recreation Center's registration system. Our team has been actively connecting with school administration and attending school lunches to interact with students within their school day. This includes outreach to Lynnwood, Mount Lake Terrace, Meadowdale, Edmonds Woodway, and Scriber Lake High Schools. In addition to schools, we've also taken flyers to several key community spaces to ensure we're reaching a broad and diverse group of students. Our timeline is structured into 3 key phases. We're currently in phase 1, which is recruitment. We're currently accepting applications, with the first review having taken place on March 16th and the final deadline of April 30th. So far, we've had 21 applications submitted with an additional 25 in a saved status. Based on our data, we have student representation from 4 out of the 5 high schools so far. In the applications, they've mentioned hearing about the Youth Council from school flyers, my mom got an email, my Career Center advisor, and the girl that leads the Teen with a Cause programs in the middle schools, which is my favorite. So each avenue that we have done promotion in has been effective. Phase 2 will be review, which will take place in May, where we will fully review our applications and hold conversations with the applicants. Then in phase 3, we'll move into launch. Youth Council members will be announced in June, with a Youth Council Summit in August. And from there, the group will really establish themselves this fall, developing bylaws, defining their scope of work, and beginning their journey as a council. As you know, it often takes 8 to 10 touch points for someone to decide they want to try something new. And so that's where your support really can make a difference. While we've seen interest this year, recruitment for the Youth Council will be an annual process. We will continue to need your support both now and in the future to help reach youth and to keep the council running at full capacity. So to review, we're looking to recruit 15 youth council members ages 14 to 19 who live in Lynnwood and or are part of the Edmonds School District. Due to the age of the individuals, their voter registration is not required. Members will generally serve a 2-year term with flexibility for graduating seniors to do a 1-year term. So we would greatly appreciate your help in sharing this opportunity at every chance you get. In closing, thank you for your continued support in bringing the Youth Council to life. We're excited about the impact we'll have in the Lynnwood community, and we look forward to keeping you up to date as we move forward.
Very good. Thank you. This is exciting news. Any council member have questions, comments? Councilmember Parshall.
Thank you, Superintendent Schutte. I just wanted to make a comment regarding the recruiting. You've probably thought of this already, but I'm going to throw it out there. I would suggest recruiting 7 or 8 seniors this year to do a 1-year term, and then that's like staggering our recruitment to like 7 or 8 every other year, so we're not recruiting 15 in any 1 year. I see by your smiling and nodding that you've already considered that, but I just want to throw it out there.
That is my hope, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Council President.
Yeah, thank you for the update. I just want to throw this out to you as well as Council Vice President Escamilla. This is just an opportunity for some clarification. So in our 2024 budget cycle, we put forth an earmarked $10,000 a year, this biennium, towards support of the Youth Council project. And I was curious, I didn't see any information here, and I just wanted to loop in some of our newer colleagues. Has there been any discussions between y'all so far about what the intent of that is, or what you're hoping to use it for?
Snacks. No, I'm serious. We get a lot of the kids. They want to be fed. They want events. They want ice cream. We want to use some of that for that, if I can speak freely.
Absolutely.
Apparently you can. Okay.
Go for it. Go for it. Yeah.
Did you have a hand up?
We have, if you want, what we've already used some of the dollars for is we've purchased postcards because those are very easy to hand out while at schools. I 100% agree on snacks. You can't expect teens to show up anywhere if we don't feed them. And then right now, with the budget restrictions that we have going right now, we are tracking the hours being put forth to this. And so we will be putting some staff dollars into that amount as well, even though long-term, hopefully, that won't be needed.
Yeah, I want to give an opportunity for the Vice President here to chime in.
Hang on. Councilmember Wright.
Okay.
Okay.
I was going to answer President Coelho's or add to. So we
Ignore me.
Go ahead. What do you want me to do? Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add to what Ms. Schutte said with regards to the budget. We actually had a meeting with the mayor and Director Faber, and that is to be determined as this is the pilot year, and we don't really know what the efforts will be. We're fortunate enough to have 2 council members kind of supplementing on staff time with the outreach. But for now, the intent was always marketing, get them T-shirts, name tags, snacks when they start. It's an pilot program budget, understanding that we're in a deficit, and if there's junctures throughout the year where we need to revisit, we understand that staff hours are being used as well. But again, our preliminary discussions were just to track it, and we would see kind of where things were going from there. Mayor, did I miss anything from that meeting?
I think not.
Okay. I was, inputting for the response.
I appreciate that. And I will let Councilmember Wright go on now, since she's been waiting very and everybody else, I guess. They've been waiting very patiently, but I do have a couple more follow-on questions after that.
Thank you. This is more of a comment, Superintendent. I am very excited about this youth council. I think any opportunity to have the youth engaged in government and civic engagement is super important. One of the things, I don't know if this will happen this year or the following years, but my younger was part of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program at Edmonds Woodway, and they have a very strong program there, and I would love to see representation of a deaf student on the council. There's a lot of us that live around here, and I don't know if that is if they come down at lunchtime, because he never went to the cafeteria at lunchtime. He stayed in his little huddle, but if that is a group that I can put you in contact with, I think there would be some students that would love to be a part of this. Thanks.
That's great. Let's be in touch.
Were there hands down there? Okay. Councilmember Lewis.
I just want to make a quick comment to say thank you, because I know you and most in the Parks Department and every department are wearing multiple hats. You had to take on a lot of extra work as a result of the budget reductions last year. So just thank you for finding time to help make this happen on top of everything else that you're doing for the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, we're going to return to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So just kind of continuing on there were some, the word pilot was used a number of times, and it's great. I'm glad we're using this as a learning opportunity to kind of shape it. I'm glad we have the budget to find out what's working, and we're not going to have the program constrained by those finances. So I think I owe the Vice President a bit of thanks for making sure we had these funding available, so this can launch properly. No, really. And so I was kind of wondering, I know this is just kind of an update on the launch of it, but as far as ongoing council support, you mentioned that in your presentation. What does that look like to you so far?
I had just meant it for, helping us get the word out and spreading the word, trying to get to those groups of people that we may miss this first go-round. In the future, I also foresee us, translating the postcard and doing many different steps. This first year really was all about let's get this started and up off the ground, and try to, again, do it within the limitations that we had. And so what you will notice if you're watching, Lisa, the other person, and I, the other staff, we're never at the same spot at the same time, right? We're doing different work. We're utilizing our council members to really bolster our efforts. And so we're really dividing and conquering. And so you guys can just also, the council members can be just an extension of that to help us do the work that we're kind of struggling to find the time for right now.
Okay. I think I'll hold my other questions for a later update.
Right. Council Vice President.
Yes, we do have an updated flyer that Executive Assistant Milburn can share with anyone if you wanted to share on your social medias. I know that Council Member Owings had already asked for one, and we had the preliminary date. We've updated them. I personally have dropped off postcards at the library, the Alderwood Boys and Girls Club, the Latino Education Training Institute, Cocoon House, Human Services Commission, and they have a spot in one of the high schools. We've done outreach at 2 high schools already. We have 2 more next week, and we're just waiting on 1. But the more forms of outreach we can do, just like they said, that it takes like 10 touches and different types of touches. I did get a request for a Spanish version just this weekend, and I haven't passed along the intel, but I could see us at minimum trying to translate to at least a few languages as we get into these last schools. And so, we are fortunate enough that we have a little bit of the budget and some of our council members' times. And we're always here to answer anyone's questions, and the kids are pretty excited. They were coming up to the table. Councilperson Mata and I did both together the high school last week. And so that's kind of, I think, where we're at and what we're hoping to do. And if you want to get more postcards, I would assume that you could just reach out to Superintendent Schutte. She's got a box, and if you guys, and there's a QR code in there that goes right to the application. And this is perfect, Councilwoman Wright, because we made it to where they don't actually have to write an essay. They could submit a video, and so it would benefit other type of learning students. So I just wanted to add that extra information for everybody. I'm just really excited. Thank you.
All right. Any other council comments before we leave this topic? Nope, we're good. All right, perfect.
Thank you.
Exciting news. Youth Council. Yes. All right, thank you. All right, we're going to go to item 11C, which is a briefing, fourth quarter 2025 financial report. Oh, there's Director Meyer. Did not even see you there.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the first of 3 items on here tonight, but they're all interrelated. We kept them separate just for the sake of clarity. I'm going to hop in here and share my screen. See if I can toggle between the tabs, or if it's going to make me change it every time. It's going to make me change it every time. Okay. Then let me share. There we go. We're good. I can toggle. Okay. So the first item up for discussion tonight is the Q4 2025 draft report. I'm going to keep saying draft. These numbers are not final until our 2025 financial statements are finalized. We are still in the process of doing that. These numbers have already changed since this went to print. But nothing should change too far. We are, it's just last minute journal entries and things like that. So overall, we are right on track with where we expected to be at the end of 2025. What's included in the packet is a comparison to budget. As we all know, 2025 did not go according to budget. We spent a lot of time last year, you can see at all of these meetings, reviewing the quarterly reports and then talking about how we were really deviating from the budget, how we were managing against reduced revenue expectations, and we'll get into that a little more in the next item when we look at the 2026 remaining budget gap. But what you can see in this report is that for being halfway through the biennium, we are largely on track with where we expect it to be. There's a summary by fund. There's not much I'm going to point out on here. We spent the majority of last year talking about the general fund. There is a separate page in here to just look at the general fund, so we will look at that one separately. On the summary by fund, really what you want to draw your attention to is just the difference between our ending fund balance and our beginning fund balance. So we ended 2025 with more funds on hand than we had at the end of 2024. So that is a good sign. It's, of course, not where we would like it to be in the general fund, right? But we are on a positive trend overall, which is what we want to see, especially when we've been saving up for some large capital projects that are coming our way, that you will start seeing some of those invoices roll in 26 and going forward. No funds can end with a negative fund balance. Even though we have a 2-year budget, we are still required by law to end the calendar year with a positive fund balance. So you'll see that none of the funds are out of balance. Everything is still ending with a positive balance. The only one that has no balance is ARPA, because it's over. We have not been able to submit our final report because the Department of Treasury is so backlogged. They won't open closeout reports for us yet, so we just keep submitting quarterly reports with zeros, but we're done spending, which is great. And then we have some of those special revenue funds like our affordable housing and opioid settlement, and those balances are continuing to accumulate. You can see that positive trend on this report. The second page is just a revenue comparison. On this one, anything over 50% is good, because typically we budget for less than 50% in the first year of the biennium. So anything that's trending higher than that is trending strong. General fund, again, we'll get into that a little more separately. You can see we're at 44% there, which is below where we expected to be when the budget was adopted. Everything is really trending as expected. I did want to point out our REIT funds right there under capital development, Fund 330 and 331. Our REIT funds are really our main source of revenue for capital development that doesn't come with a lot of restrictions. There are some restrictions imposed by the state, but for us, as far as the capital projects we use it on, we have a lot of flexibility, which is great because we don't have a lot of capital funding sources that don't have extra restrictions on them, and we have had a reduction in the funds that are available to us for capital funding over the past couple of years. REIT is trending very strong for the first year of the biennium. That doesn't mean it will continue next year. This is made up of a percentage of sales from retail property sales that happen within the city limits. If there is one large real estate transaction that can really swing REIT for the year. So it's usually large commercial transactions that drive a very strong REIT year, not just a typical residential turnover rate. So that one's looking great, which is good. We have no shortage of needs for capital funding coming up in the next biennium. I did want to highlight on the bottom there the total for all funds. It looks like revenues from between, if you compare 2024 to 2025, it looks like revenues have gone down. It's hard to look at that as an aggregate, though, because a lot of these revenues are transfers between funds. If you look at some of these special revenue funds, a lot of that money then gets transferred out to the capital funds. Some of the funds get kind of distributed. Sometimes we'll transfer from utility operations to utility capital. So it looks like revenue. It's not new money. The expenditure comparison, this is where you want to see below 50% on the side. We are at 46% expended for the general fund. We knew when the budget was adopted, and then again when we started managing it and reducing our expenditures, we still knew that expenditures were going to continue to exceed revenues for 2025. So that's not a surprise. The ones where you do see numbers that look a little out of whack, a lot of those are just funds that don't receive revenues on a flat basis. There's a lot of spikes and then low times. We don't really receive revenues 1/12 of each month. That's not typically how they come in. So even if some of them look low, it's not necessarily concerning because of how the revenues are dispersed. We are, let's see, is there any I wanted to point out? Some that are looking a little high. It just looks high percentage-wise, like capital development, Fund 333. That's because that fund wasn't receiving any new money. The only budget for the year was to transfer it out for a capital project. The transfer occurred. It's at 100%. You're not going to see any more expenditures out of there, so it's not a problem. Overall, if you compare year to year, again, it looks like expenditures are way down. Again, that's hard to make a comparison. The majority of that swing was there in Fund 390. That was for public safety capital. That was bond proceeds that were spent down in 2024 for the construction of the CJC. So when you take that out of there, there's not that big of a difference between the amounts that were expended year over year. Here's where we want to spend a little more time. This is looking at the general fund. So we started 2025 with about $8 million, which is lower than what we were expecting to start with in the budget. You can see that there at the top. Overall, the revenues, as mentioned, are at 44%, which is about $70 million. The expenditures are about 72.3, which is $46 million. So we did spend a little over $2 million more than what we took in. The ending fund balance, however, get this out of here. The ending fund balance is what we've been focusing a lot on during our conversations for 2025. And so that is lower than where we wanted it to be, but we are still in compliance with our fund balance policy. Again, this is draft. This is going to change a little bit, but there's nothing to indicate at this point that we will not remain in compliance with the fund balance policy that was updated last year, that we will be reviewing again at the end of tonight's meeting. At this point, we are on track with where we expected to close the year, and we are actually showing $1 million to the good for the 2025 ending fund balance policy, which we need going into 2026, and we'll talk about that in the next item. But this is a combination of the reductions that were made and also the action that council took then to update the minimum fund balance policy. If we were still operating off of a 2.5-month minimum, we would be out of compliance by over $1 million. So that action is why we are in the black for the end of 2025. Summary by department. This one's hard to get a lot of value from at this point because these budgets are not what these departments are operating towards. All of our budgets have been effectively reduced operationally. We just did not cut them through a formal budget amendment process in accordance with state law. You don't have to amend a budget to decrease appropriations. You just have to amend it to increase it. So we've been calling managing it outside of the system, really. But what you want to see on here is under 50%. So if we're on track, we're under 50% of the adopted budget. If we're way under 50% on here, that's because of those budget reductions. And there were some potentially discretionary funds that are not going to be spent this biennium as part of those budget management strategies and those commitments that we made in 2025 to reduce our budgets. The only one on here that looks a little out of whack is the fire. That's pretty much out of our control anyway. We contract with South County Fire. We basically pass through a portion of our revenues from fire-related permit fees back to the district. What looks a little out of whack on this one for 2025, you can see under personnel benefits, there's $94,000. It wasn't budgeted. This is money that we get from the state. We used to run it through what's called a fiduciary fund. It's a non-budgeted fund. It means it's not our money. We would put it in that fund, and then we would turn around and pay our left firefighter pensions with it. It was a complete wash. The city didn't cover anything. In our 2024 audit, the auditors came back and said that we should be posting it to revenues and expenditures in the general fund before transferring it over to that fiduciary fund to pay it out of there. So you will see that in an upcoming budget amendment, but we didn't know that at the time the budget was adopted. So that's why it's in there now, but it'll be fine because the money's coming in to wash out. There's no net impact to the fund. Just making us book it differently. And then, let's see. The last one in here is just our cash and investment review. Really the thing to focus on is the bottom line there. We're still earning a very strong rate of return on interest despite all the fluctuations in the market. We have some good long-term investments that we invested when rates were pretty high, so we brought in a little over $200,000 for the quarter ended December 31st of 25. That gets distributed to the funds based on their ending fund balance at the end of the month. So we do a monthly interest allocation based on the balances in the funds. So that can fluctuate where the money goes depending on the balance. That was it. I know it's a lot. We wanted to save more time to review the next item to look at the budget gap tracker, but if there's any questions, I can scroll back.
All right, Councilmember Mata.
Thank you for this. Honestly, looking at these the finance reports really just make my eyes glaze over, but you do a good job of explaining it, so it's not hard to follow along. So my question, and it's come to our attention, I think, over the last week, Alderwood Water District, that they essentially didn't pay their taxes for like 15 years to the city. And now a bunch of the constituents in our community owe large bills, like $300 to $600. Is there any talk of assistance that the city, I don't really know what we can do, but constituents are reaching out to us, asking for help. We don't know when Alderwood is going to pay this. Is there any support that has been talked about in closed doors that I'm not a part of about how we can support our community members that are being hit with these bills due to administrative error on our part? Yeah.
So the way it's Lynnwood Municipal Code Section 3.41, I believe, that speaks to our utility taxes, and the obligation of the utility tax is the obligation of the business, not necessarily the obligation of the end customer. The utility has the option to pass it on to the end customer. It's the same thing the city of Lynnwood does to our water and sewer customers. We pass that tax right back on. So individual customers who are getting that rate third party from the service provider don't have a right under that code to appeal the tax. The only way that tax can be appealed to the council is the service provider. So the way the code is established, it says the finance director has the authority to enforce the code at the rate that is paid, to levy penalties if appropriate, to ask for backup information, to make adjustments if appropriate to their returns. But any form of appeal or relief from paying that would have to be on behalf of the service provider directly to the governing body. And that was not something that Alderwood asked when we began these discussions. I believe they understood that this was an obligation. They don't have a record of being notified of it in 2010 or 2015 when the rates raised. We don't have records of providing that information. I can say that when we brought it to their attention, they immediately started working with us to calculate what was owed, to get us an estimate of that amount, and then say they would be working to determine how far they could go back and bill their customers. But as far as the city providing direct relief to those end customers, that's not something we would be in a position to do.
Okay, that makes sense. What steps are being taken so that this never happens again?
I would say this is very unique. We are the largest service provider of water and sewer utility within the city limits. I'm not sure everybody even realized that Alderwood had a small service area within the city limits. It's not something that I think most people would assume because we have our own utility. When I first did the review last summer, the reason we reached out was when council took action to change the deadlines. We standardized some deadlines between different forms of utility taxes and gambling tax, things like that, to standardize the deadline. We were looking at all the remitters to contact them to let them know that the forms had changed, the deadline had changed, and we didn't see Alderwood in the list of recent remitters. And we thought, well, that's weird, but there must be some agreement on file that predates all of us here that shows why they're not paying. And so that was the first thing we did, was reach out to Alderwood and asked if they had a copy of an ILA or something on file that was adopted a long time ago that alleviated them from that responsibility. And they couldn't find one, and we couldn't find one. And so what we ended up doing was just going back as far as we statutorily could, based on the advice of our two attorneys.
Okay. I think it sucks I just think it sucks with raising rates, the budget crisis that we're in. I think looking at overall our budget, and you even said it, there's a $2 million gap between expenditures and revenue. If I'm running a business, we have that gap. That's a structural issue, not just a one-time issue. And the issue is going to persist if we don't change the way we are structurally doing things in our city from the way everything is being run. So I know this isn't just on you, but I really want to understand and hear from, I guess, the executive too, of what's being done structurally to make sure that this never happens again, this not being Alderwood Water District, this being the way that our government is run and funded. Because if we continue down the path we're going every year, we're going to face these issues where we're spending way more than we're bringing in. And I don't feel like I've gotten an answer from anybody yet on what are we doing to preemptively kind of change the way things have been done so that this never happens again.
I think I can address part of that when we get to the next item.
Okay. Yeah. And we're going to be creating a new biennial budget. And yes, we're looking at all the structures that we have to. And just to be fair, we have so many actually utilities that we do collect a utility tax from, and none of them really are. They all follow the law. Basically, I mean, it's in our ordinance. When you're a utility and you do business in Lynnwood, you pay a tax. It was Alderwood that did not follow that LMC, that law. So other utilities have. So we'll just work with them and try to make sure we get our money owed. Unfortunately, they chose to try to do they are doing a retroactive tax to their customers. That was their choice, not ours. Sorry to interrupt. Any other comments on this section? All right, you got 52 seconds. Go for it.
Director Meyer, on the investment slide, can you just talk through how that works with what does that money represent versus what we see on the fund balances on the previous slides?
Yes. So this is where we have our funds, and it is not necessarily one fund's money. This is just how we are backing up our revenues in a way that allows us to earn the greatest rate of return but still protect the principal balance in accordance with our financial policies. We have limited investment avenues available to us, and so we are conservative with those investments, but also we try to keep a certain amount in longer-term investments to get a higher rate of return for the city. The cash on hand, about $17 million. That's our checking account, basically. So that's what's used to pay AP and payroll. We have the Washington State Local Government Investment Pool, LGIP is what you'll hear that referred to as. There's about $13 million in there. That is almost as good as cash for us. We can get access to that money pretty much immediately if we needed it. If for some reason our checking account was running low and we needed to cover payroll or we needed to cover a large accounts payable run for a capital project, we could pull funding over from the local government investment pool very quickly. The Snohomish County Investment Pool, that is also available very quickly. They just don't like you to pull it that quickly if you can help it. We originally invested $10 million. I want to say 4 years ago when I first started is when we became a member. And we've allowed that money to sit there and grow, and it's now over $11 million. Those are just local investment pools. They manage the long-term investments. They buy the bonds with those funds, but then we can invest with them instead of going directly to the bondholders. The reason it's favorable is, again, we can draw that down if we need to relatively quickly. Our U.S. Bank investment portfolio, those are our longer-term bonds, typically a year, 2 years, sometimes 4 or 5, depending on the interest rate. We will kind of tie those up as long as we can because we know we have to maintain a certain level of minimum fund balance. Whatever we know we're really not planning on spending, we try to tie up for a little longer term to get that guaranteed rate of return. So when you hear us say it's liquid, that really just means we can get access to it. But these funds, again, are not tied to one of our account balances, so to speak. This is just our overall makeup of where our funds are held.
So, yeah, just to make it very clear, when we talk about $2 million budget shortfall or just going through the budget, this is not a separate
Correct.
$18 million that we could pull from. It's all of that money. It's just being invested to try to get some returns, but it's not a separate pool of money we can pull from to solve our shortfall or help with the general fund because that's where it came from in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's already there. It's already counted.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? Very good. Let's go to then topic 11D, which is the briefing or follow-up information on the 25-26 budget. Thank you. Back to Director Meyer.
Thank you. As we just mentioned, we spent a lot of 2025 looking at the budget that was just adopted because it was identified very early on in the year that we weren't on track with some of the optimistic revenue forecasts that were used. We actually started the year $3 million short of where we expected to even start the year. So we knew immediately that we had to take some action to start figuring out how to close that gap. And then through the first and second quarters, it became increasingly apparent that the downturn in the economy was negatively impacting us, and those optimistic revenue forecasts were not going to come to bear. We came to council, I want to say in May, I could be wrong on that date, to start talking about how we were going to manage that shortfall. The shortfalls, as you know, but just for anybody who's not familiar with this, it was primarily sales tax, development permit revenues related to large construction projects within the city that we were expecting to continue at a very high rate in 2025 and 2026 based on the opening of light rail. And then we increased our red light camera revenue estimate significantly based on higher ticket counts that we were seeing throughout the summer when the budget was being put together. We had some cameras come back online after the 196 project. We thought that information was predictive. It was not. It was a increase for a time, and then it went right back down. But that was after the budget was already adopted. And then the other one that we added to the mix a little after the budget discussion started was the contract revenue for the Community Justice Center. We reduced that down as well. So what we brought forward to council initially was about a $25 million gap between the adopted budget and the anticipated forecast for 25 and 26. We were looking at the full biennium as a whole picture. And then let's see. Council staff took action to reduce about $12 million of expenses. We found some one-time transfers we could move over from other funds. We did true-ups of some capital projects to pay back the general fund for labor that was spent on those projects, a few of those things. And then council, you'll all remember at the end of last year, between November and December, you took a lot of action to increase some revenue. So this goes back to the question from Councilmember Mata about how we're trying to adjust that structural deficit. Kind of how we got in this situation was over the past few bienniums, we were adding permanent services using one-time revenues. We were counting on a large rate of growth in some areas that have a lot of fluctuation and are very reactive to a downturn in the economy. So some of the actions that were taken by council at the end of last year and then again at the beginning of this year, that's starting to get towards that structural balance. And, put a few more things in the mix for revenues so that we're not so reliant on just a few sources. This is just a visualization of that picture. So we started with that $25 million deficit. It was $22 million of revenue reductions and then that $3 million beginning fund balance shortfall. That's where we get that nice round number. The department cuts, again, were about right under $7 million, right under $12 million. The fund balance policy, again, that was a large action that we brought forward to council. We showed you the information that we'll talk about in the next item, but we discussed kind of best practices, how it was still okay to reduce that down to 2 months rather than 2.5 and keep us in compliance with best practices. But that was a large change in that ending target of about $2.8 million. We transferred in almost 2.5 put together between the transfers in and an updated cost allocation. Recreation fees were increased a little bit, and their volume was actually up, so they brought in more revenues than originally budgeted. Council took action to increase the property tax by $1 million, and then took action to increase the utility taxes. That increase in utility tax from 6% to 10% is estimated to generate right under $2 million. Then the action to adjust the business license base and fees is about $550,000 altogether. Some permit fees, we've counted on $500,000. Again, these are difficult to predict just because of the fluctuations in those projects and when the fees come in, but we're going to stick with that number that was shown last year during the action that council took. And early this year, the public safety enhancement sales tax was adopted. I was holding off on plugging that into this forecast for a long time. And so we've made it to this point. It's going in effect next week, next Wednesday. The 0.1 additional public safety enhancement sales tax goes into place. We will start receiving that. We should start receiving that at the end of June. So there's that 2-month delay in the collection, then the remittance, then the deposit back to the city. We have plugged in $1.75 million here. If you'll remember from the agenda bill, we're thinking a full year of this would be about $3 million. So we're going to collect, 7 months, I think. So we've got the $1.75 million in there. The police department is working aggressively to try to meet all the requirements outlined by the Criminal Justice Training Committee, if I say that right. That's who is kind of in charge of reviewing those applications and approve them. I believe we have provisional approval. We are just waiting on final approval at this point. So that's been plugged in there. That reduced the gap. We ended 25 with a gap of $3.75 million. So that drew that down to about $2 million. Departments have been working and meeting to identify some additional reductions that are available in the 26 budget. And right now I've just kind of aggregated them in there for $2 million. We are still kind of working out the details on that. There's some that aren't fully finalized, but that's our commitment, is that we will come up with that additional $2 million amongst the departments. So what that means, assuming the public safety enhancement sales tax comes through, that they don't withhold some sort of penalty. There's discussions of the possibility that they withhold $100,000 a month in a penalty, which for us would mean we're still getting revenue. Some cities can't absorb that because their monthly revenue wouldn't even be $100,000. I'm still unclear on when that would take effect, if it even would take effect. There's discussions of it being 6 months down the road, but I don't know if that's 6 months from the date of adoption, or 6 months from the date of collection, or 6 months from the date of remittance. Still a lot of what ifs in there, but we felt like at this point we were close enough to the implementation that we could count on that. So that means that the $25 million gap is closed. We're going to be working on updating the forecast once we have final numbers for 2025, and we can start doing some more in-depth forecasting for 26, and then looking beyond. I don't believe this means we are out of the woods for 27, 28. I'll just, be upfront about that now. Our revenues are not going to continue to increase at the same rate that our expenditures are increasing. That is how we got in this situation. Our expenditures have continued to increase at a rate that is outpacing revenues. That's likely to continue, but we will work on keeping you informed as we go forward and addressing some of those structural issues. I think will be a focus of the 27-28 budget process when we get to that point.
We good?
Oh, yes. Sorry. I thought I saw a hand.
Okay. Yeah, you did, but I would just take a moment of silence for the burial of the deficit. From 25 million, we're now at 0. So that is just awesome. Good work for the council, from the council. Good work from staff. All right. Councilmember Mata.
That's awesome. This is great. I know that, there's still more cuts to be made, so I know it's not final, but that's awesome. And I have a small concern that I just kind of caught. Public safety sales tax is going into Fund 105. Mm-hmm. When we approved the public safety sales tax tax, I was under the impression that this was going into an entirely separate fund specifically for the public safety sales tax, not just into the fund for the PD. I'm really, really perplexed and kind of upset that it's in Fund 105.
No, that's a good segue. I meant to address this anyway. Council Vice President Escamilla had raised the same concern at a Finance Committee meeting. That was my note. I just put Fund 105/PD because what we were planning on doing for just 2026 for this was using the revenue to offset the gap for 2026. So whether it goes into Fund 105 or another special revenue fund, the ordinance that council adopted did specify that it had to go into a special revenue fund. My note just said Fund 105 because that special revenue fund already exists for the police department. I'm always supportive of not making extra funds that we have to segregate and report on and roll up for financial reporting if we don't have to, but if that's what council wants as a separate one, you already have the ordinance in place to do that. I think that we don't have money yet, so we haven't done anything with it. We have time between now and the time we would actually get money to clarify that. I think the important thing for me to know at this point is if there is governing body support to continue with the plan to use that amount for 2026 to close the gap, which is what we were planning on doing with it. And then for the 27-28 budget process, there would be a deeper discussion. I know the police department is working on identifying what specific things that can be used for. It is still restrictive in nature. There's still things that can and can't be done with it. So they are the subject matter experts on that. But the chief has reviewed it and identified that for 2026, it'd be fine to transfer the full amount over to the general fund to support police operations because it is allowable to supplant. So you can use that money to fund things that you are already planning on doing with other money, whether you have that money or don't have that money anymore.
Okay, that makes sense, and I think that's good, and it's okay that it can be used to close that gap. I'm really just mainly concerned for 2027. I would like it to be in a separate fund, and I understand that that's more work. But for me, the only reason I approved this was because it was very clear where this would go to serving, domestic violence victims and programs for them, integration programs from the jail, mental health, all of these other kinds of things that are not just for adding more police officers. And my fear is if it stays in Fund 105, it's going to be used in other ways. And that's my personal opinion on it based on the reason why I approved it in the first place. So I would like us to make moves to create a different fund for 2027. I'm open to hearing what everybody else thinks about it.
Councilmember Lutweiler.
I have two questions, comments, but maybe the first real quick. You had mentioned in the Finance Committee tracking money as through an account, not just through the fund. Maybe that would be a helpful bit of detail of if this did sit in Fund 105 from that account perspective, how would that work to give oversight on this bucket of money versus the rest of 105?
Good question. So when we get the report from the state every month, they identify what's called a BARS number. It's the budgeting, accounting, and reporting system numbers that the state makes all jurisdictions use. We have to have those core numbers in there in our accounts, even if our account structure is different than other agencies. When the public safety sales tax begins to come into us, it will have a separate BARS number or separate account number from the other criminal justice sales tax allocations that we get from the state. It'll have a different number from our regular sales tax. It will be easily identifiable. We are going to have to create a separate account to track those revenues so that we are in line with the state's numbering system, basically, with their accounting. So we will be able to see exactly what comes in for that.
Thanks.
Separately.
And then my original question was going to be, and I should have asked you this via email ahead of time, so if you don't have the numbers, that's okay, but an important detail that I want to make sure we kind of reiterate, out of the roughly $12 million in department cuts, there was a significant portion of that were like one-time cuts. We're not going to see that similar, reduction or, continue through 2026 into future years. Like the vehicle fleet,
Right,
I forget the
correct.
list. So, like I said, I should have shot you an email. So I don't know if you have a ballpark or just some flavor to that, because I think that's really helpful context for all of us to keep in mind as we think about 2027. And to your point that we're not out of the clear yet, is we've got a significant dollar amount that we have to go back and solve for still.
Off the top of my head, I think the fleet changes were right under $1 million. It was predominantly for the police department. So the police department worked with the Public Works Department, who maintains the fleet, to basically lengthen the life cycle of a lot of their vehicles. So instead of a 5-year replacement, they went to a 6-year replacement, for example. So you're not going to see that same level of savings in future years because they've already done that extension. Every department is looking at their fleet. The departments with vehicles are looking at their fleet to see if they can downsize or if they can continue to extend that life. That will happen again for 26. It's happening in 26. It'll happen again for the 27-28 biennium. But it's likely that you'll see those fleet charges increase again, and you're not going to have that same level of savings for fleet. Part of that transfer in amount was, quite a bit of that transfer in amount was from Fund 105. And so that was the police department's, their criminal justice fund. That was the additional revenue that they had taken in from the photo red cameras. There's an additional $25 traffic safety fee that we used to be allowed to levy that we're not at the moment, but they had some funds sitting in Fund 105 for that. That was right under $1 million. That came over. That's a one-time transfer. We don't expect $1 million a year to come over from Fund 105 to support the general fund. And some of those transfers in as well, those were one-time cleanup things. We're not going to see that again. That was closing out like 7 years of projects that hadn't been trued up. And then some of the department cuts, a few of those things were one-time. A lot of them were personnel that were either held vacant or some positions that were eliminated. The first thing we're going to do for the 27-28 biennium is identify which positions we are forecasting to move forward into 27 and 28. And so the leadership team is going to review all of the vacancies. I believe there is the assumption that we will continue to try to run with as many vacancies as possible for 27 and 28, because we know that returning to a full level of staffing is not possible just 1 year after this level of a reduction. But that'll be the first thing we put together, because our staffing is 75% of our budget. So once we can iron some of those things out, that will give us a pretty good picture of how we're looking going forward.
Okay, Council Vice President.
Thank you for the update, Director Meyer. My question to you is, it sounds like, and confirm if I'm wrong, that we have until June to decide where to put the money, so long as it goes into the back to the Fund 105. Is that a true statement that we have time? We don't have to decide now?
Yes. So you already took the action to say special revenue fund.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to take any more formal action to decide that it has to be a separate one. If that's the guidance from the majority of the council, we just need to know that by the end of June so that we can set that fund up.
So understanding that it will have its own account number within Fund 105 to differentiate it from other monies, also correct me if I'm wrong, there would be no councilmatic or mayoral control over any of the monies spent, right?
You have the same level of control, whether it's Fund 105 or another fund, because you adopt the budget for every single one of those funds. So what you would see for 2026, whether it was in Fund 105 or another fund, you would see us coming forward to you towards the end of the year for a budget amendment to transfer 1.75 or whatever it ends up being, whatever that actual dollar amount is. You'd see in action for a budget amendment to transfer that internally is what you'd see. So it would still take council action to do that, whether it was in 105 or another fund.
I'm asking for explanation and also clarity to community so that you understand that once we approve a bucket of money for a department or even the fund, there is no control or transparency. The finance committee reviews what's being spent, what's being invoiced, the checks. Each department has its own right to say yes or no to the expenses, so long as it's within their approved budget. And so my concern and why I brought it up to leadership last week was the whole premise and what the community was sold on this safety sales tax was not just safety, but it was a lot of human services. My concern is we put it in Fund 105 and it just keeps on getting spent within that department, and the community sits there once again for another however many years not knowing where their money is going. The reason that I think as a council mostly loved this sales tax, and I understand that I didn't vote for it, but it was for different reasons. I loved this sales tax because to me it showed transparency. For me, it was the only tax since I've been in here where the community could say, oh, well, I'm broke, but at least I know that my tax dollars, they could follow it. There'd be a traceable A to Z because council is taking councilmatic decisions, even if it did sit with the police department or did sit with whatever department, they would come forward and be like, hey, we would like to use it for a new community program, whether it be police. Hey, human services, we want to use it for temporary housing. And then council votes and approves. Every decision is made through a democracy, and the community can follow their dollars, and then they know why or why not they're sitting there broke. And so for me, that was why I was wondering. That is why I was curious. I know that the uses will be the uses, and I'm not worried about our departments not using them for what it's for. What I want and what I'm seeking and what I think our community deserves after this surprise deficit and every lever being pulled known to man is to at least know where their money's going. And I will advocate for either a special fund or a general, wherever it goes, that we get to have control and show the community where this dollar is going. And I know that wasn't a question, but I just wanted to explain why, if you had anything to add to that.
I get it. It's easier to look at it at a glance if it's in a separate fund rather than having it roll into another one. There's some funds that we have chosen to create separate funds. The opioid funding is one example. That has external restrictions, so it's easy for us to segregate it so that we can make sure that when we have to report how we spent that, it's easy to parse it out. It's not required. That was a choice. We could have put that right in the general fund, but that would have made reporting more difficult. For the public safety sales tax, I feel like it's more of an internal restriction then, not necessarily an external one where we'd have to do it. The auditors aren't requiring it, but again, you already made the motion. The ordinance already specifies special revenue fund. If that just means a new special revenue fund, that's okay. If that will go a long way towards the apparent, towards the transparency, or just looking at it at a glance, that's fine. It would just be something like 106 or 107. It'd be something like that, a special revenue fund.
Thank you for answering that and clarifying how the approvals go once it's been, overall approved. And kudos to the first time seeing a zero in a long time. Yeah. I know that hurt every single department.
All right, Council President.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for your engagement on our finances. It's really exciting to me to see how engaged this group is, whether there's a deficit or not, and maybe someday we'll be out of a deficit. I don't want to, okay, I'll knock on wood. We still have a year to get through, but I am so thrilled that a plan is actually coming together and we're getting to that zero. The first real vote of some of my colleagues on this council was a controversial sales tax that put us towards the top of any other municipality in the state, and that was a pretty bold thing to do, guys, and you kind of took a leap of faith on it. I know that while there are some questions that remain, and I have some notes from our finance committee, about having a follow-up, about seeing how the police department is doing on their CJTC compliance, and looking again at what we want to do with the special fund. So your comments are well heard. But if we had delayed that vote, and I understand that the Vice President, your main concern was that, it felt like we were rushing into it, and we were pressing forward at a pretty swift pace. What would have happened to this chart if we had not voted in that very first business meeting to pass this?
We'd be looking at another $1.75 million in service level cuts in departments, the general fund departments.
Okay. And I know we haven't really gone into what those cuts are looking like at the moment that are being made in the $2 million there. But
it'd be people. I mean, just there'd be no way to close that additional gap without additional layoffs.
And we're thinking we're making it through without additional layoffs at the moment?
At the moment.
At the moment, okay. Mm-hmm. If we had delayed the vote, what would that have impacted our revenue stream like? What if we had voted for it, after a month or two of talking this year?
What is it? 200? I think it's 200,000 a month or 225,000 a month was the estimate. So every month you delayed, it's a little over 200,000. Which is at least a position, right? That's one or two bodies.
And that would have been multiple months of delays because it is pushed back a whole quarter.
You can only implement April 1st, July 1st, and then I believe October 1st. It's quarterly. And there's a 60 days notice or 90 days notice required. So you can only implement quarterly, and they have to have a certain amount of notice. So that could have backed it up significantly.
And so I just want to reiterate, when the mayor says kudos to the council for doing this, and of course kudos to the staff, they're the ones taking the pain, but that was a tough vote to take on, I think, good data, but also vibes and trust. And I really appreciate what you guys did on that first business meeting. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Something else, I don't think we touched on it here, but it's that little pet project of mine. I'm trying to get inflation adjustments into our revenue streams so that we can, as a council, really understand the purchasing power of our revenues. Did we go over that during the presentation? Did I look away for a moment?
No, okay. I didn't mention it. We talked about that at the Finance Committee meeting. We go over the monthly sales tax data. I didn't think to include that in this packet. I should have included the sales tax summary for 2025, so you had that information. But one of the things Council President has asked as part of the Finance Committee over the past year is to have some data specifically related to sales tax that is adjusted for inflation. It's not in front of you, but I can tell you basically what it looks like. We looked back to 2018 as our base year and then compared every year of our revenues. 2018 inflation adjusted numbers, I think we took in about $22 million in sales tax. If you look at 2019, I think 2019 was right around 22 million. That fell with COVID in 2020. And then in 2023, 2024, when all the ARPA money was out there, all the stimulus money was out, when none of us had to pay our student loan payments for a long time, and they were really trying to spur on the economy and keep spending strong during COVID, our sales tax data adjusted for inflation, and inflation was very high in those years. It was around 23 or 24 million. So it's an increase in the real dollars, even if you adjust for inflation, because there was that much more money floating around the economy. If you look at 2024 and 2025, we fell back down to that 22 million amount before all the stimulus funding was out there. And so it was really interesting to see that data. And I can send that to you. Since I didn't include it in the packet, I can send that along with the the annual information for sales tax. It is in the packet for the Finance Committee from last Tuesday. If you want to look at it before I send it, the data is in there. But I think that just shows that while we were counting on growth in real dollars, not even revenue adjusted or inflation adjusted dollars, we were counting on growth in real dollars to balance our budget. we had actually fallen behind where the $23 were if we adjust for inflation. So it was even more of a slowdown, I think, than we realized. We knew we weren't going to make our growth-oriented target, but if you adjust for inflation, we're actually further behind than we thought we were. So just, I think, interesting information to have as we go forward with budgeting for new biennium. As the economy continues to be very unstable, we still have inflation and just a lot of uncertainty about a lot of things that impact our main revenue stream, which is sales tax.
Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that because since 2018, a lot has changed in the city. We've taken on new debt burdens. We've added a lot of new staff, if I'm remembering right.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're doing it with our largest chunk of revenue having essentially stayed the same. And I don't know, compound interest is, a sobering thing to look at. And when you look at it through the lens of inflation, it's still the same power. So anyway, thank you.
All right. Nothing more on this item. We'll go to item 11E, which is a resolution about the general fund minimum fund balance policy update.
Okay. So as we just mentioned during last year when we were looking at ways to close that $25 million gap, one of the ways that was offered up as an option to council was that we could reduce that minimum fund balance target. Our financial policies had in there that we would maintain a general fund balance policy with the equivalent of 2.5 months of expenditures from the general fund's prior year. And that balance is comprised of our general fund balance and also our $6 million revenue stabilization fund. You'll hear it called the reserve fund. That's rolling up in there for that calculation, even though it's sitting in a separate fund from the general fund. Council took action in October to go ahead and reduce that down from 2.5 months to 2 months, which again offset that balance by over $2 million. It's the reason we ended 2025 in compliance with our own policies. As we talked about last year, we were better to amend the policy than we were to violate the policy. That doesn't look good to our bond rating agencies or to our auditors when they're looking at our compliance with our own policies. 2 months is still within the Government Finance Officers Association best practice window of 2 to 3 months. There is an article from GFOA in here as an attachment in case you're interested. But before the update was adopted last year to put the change into place, a motion was made to amend it, and a whereas clause was added to the resolution so that the 2.0 month minimum would expire at the end of 2026, and then we would automatically default back to the 2.5 month in 2027. And now here we are. It's 2026, and we are getting ready to start the budget process for 27-28. And I think this would unduly hinder the council in trying to come up with a balanced budget if we were to put that requirement back in place right now. We need more time. You don't want a finance director that recommends that you have a low fund balance policy, so I'm not going to tell you that it's my recommendation. I think we should have 3 months, right? You want me to be conservative and say that. But I don't think it's very practical at this point after all the work that's been done to reduce expenditures and raise revenues to basically put yourself in a position to not be in compliance with this walking into the 27-28 budget process. There's still too much work to do. So I'm putting this in front of you now. So that if this is council's desire to remove that end date and continue this, we have that information and we can start doing the 27-28 forecast with those targets in mind. So that'll lower basically the negative number we're working to close as we bring forward the budget to you for consideration later in the year.
Any questions or comments? Council President.
Yeah, thank you, Director Meyer. I just wanted to comment on some options we laid out for amending this resolution before it goes out. One of the reasons we put this 2026 deadline in there, or end of 2026 deadline in there, was just to make sure we had a sunset, make sure that we had a reminder that we needed to re-examine this going forward. Like you said, we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough padding when we have such a volatile revenue source to deal with. If we were going to put a new sunset date in, what would be reasonable to kind of address the concerns you're talking about with the next biennium budget planning, while still making sure that this will have to be reviewed just by virtue of it having a sunset?
So our financial policies already say that we should be reviewing them every 2 years. We've happened to review them annually for the past couple of years, just because there's been things we needed to update. This, again, counts as the review for this year if we change it. I would say at least give yourselves to the end of 28, but more realistically, you may want to look at 2030 or 2032. We put together a 6-year forecast for the general fund as part of the budget process. We look at that pretty heavily when we come forward to you to make sure that we're not just in good shape for 27, 28 for the upcoming biennium, but that we're also on track to stay in compliance with that policy going forward based on the assumptions that are in that forecast. You've seen us do that in prior years where we might have looked like we were going to have a big surplus at the end of one biennium, but it's because we needed it in an upcoming one. If you change that fund balance policy within that 6 years, you're going to see it in that forecast. It's about a $3 million swing, and that swing is just going to get larger every year as the expenditures increase because it's based on a portion of the expenditures from the prior year. So it'll continue to grow. So I'd say at least give yourselves to 28. If you want to give yourself a little more room till 30 or 32, you could do that. But again, we should be reviewing this every couple of years anyway, and you always have the opportunity to change it at that point. It would just, any end date we are aware of now will allow us to plan for it in that 6-year forecast.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's my only question for you. Thanks.
Any other council members? Any action?
Can I get a resolution number from the interim city clerk?
2026-06.
I move to adopt Resolution 2026-06, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Lynnwood, Washington, amending the City of Lynnwood financial policies to remove the end date for the general fund reserve policy.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Council President, you want to speak to that?
Sure. Usually we like to do kind of the old 1-2 punch of having a work session before we go to a business meeting and vote on things. But like the finance director said, this is something that is very much needed by our city departments to be able to plan for the next biennium. And the sooner they can get the certainty of the target that they're going to have to shoot for, the better planning is going to take place. So we ended up moving it up to this business meeting, and I apologize for that, but I don't see another path. So it felt like we should just knock it out. I had originally intended to propose putting a sunset in to the end of 2028, but being reminded of how regularly we do review these policies, and again, seeing how engaged our finance committee is, I'm not overly concerned with us making bad decisions. So I think your comment about a slow and gradual rise, maybe closer to 2030, makes a lot of sense, and I would ask for my colleagues' support.
Any other questions or comments by council members? Councilmember Weiler?
I was just going to say, I think maybe a lot of us, and certainly people in the community, probably are drawn to the notion of having it sunset again within a couple years. I have been thinking about that myself. I think it does create a lot of turmoil and volatility that we've talked about. I think what will be much more important is, as we go into the biennium budget, is just digging into the fundamental structural decisions that we're making that have kind of set us up where our general fund balance was so precarious when we actually hit the bad times. That's my frustration with this, is it's not even, I'm not sure how much you got into it in your presentation. Like, we've got general accounting best practices that all say 2 months is totally fine. We're not doing anything unusual here. But it's just the context, the timing of it, where you can kind of see us bleeding our general fund balance, when the times were good, with ARPA funds and everything. And so we were in a precarious spot when there was an actual sustained downturn. So I just want to acknowledge, I think, that sense maybe from the community and people on the council of wanting that sunset, but I would say the real difference will be when we get into the budget. And I think also, maybe not to go on too long, but I just think it'll be a big wake-up call for us on the council and the community, and probably not for the staff because you guys are living and breathing it, but I think it's a big wake-up call. Like, it's going to be tough decisions. Like, talking about what we want to do with the public safety sales tax, personally, it's like all we're doing is plugging some gaping wounds in our budget. There's really, I don't see any opportunity for us to be doing a lot of innovative, like, new programs, anything else. Like, I just want to emphasize, I think it's going to be a painful process of trying to figure out of our current operations, what can we keep going? So just emphasizing that, and again, acknowledging, we come up here and make these decisions, and then we leave, and we don't go and spend the rest of the work week trying to figure out how do we get $2 million, on a spreadsheet for council. So I just want to acknowledge, again, how painful this has been for all the departments, and thank you for coming up and helping to spell it out for us.
Any other comments? Council Vice President.
Thank you. I guess it's just a quick layman term explanation of the 2 versus 2.5, 3 months, so that the community knows why we're staying here is because it would just increase the deficit again. And why we're not setting a sunset date is because we're still figuring it out. And so this is like our emergency nest egg. If everything went south, how many months we would have, and it used to be more. And in order to close this gap, we went down to 2, and this is us voting to keep it there for now or for indefinitely for a time period. You guys are now hearing that it changes fast, and so we're going to keep it open for now and revisit it each year. So I know sometimes I get lost in the technicalities, and so I just wanted to break it down really quickly. Thank you.
Any others? Since this is really a vote regarding our financial policy, let's have a roll call vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Partial.
Yes.
Councilmember Owings.
Yes.
Councilmember Lutweiler.
Yes.
Council President Coelho.
Yes.
Councilmember Motto.
Yes.
Council Vice President Escamilla.
Yes.
Councilmember Wright.
Yes.
7 yeses, 0 nos.
Very good. Motion passes. Look at the time, and we're at new business. We have at least an hour of new business possibilities here. Any new business? Yes? Is that a yes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, we were given our marching orders here by Mr. Martin. And I don't know if we need to vote on anything tonight, but I did just want to get a temperature check. Is this something that the council is interested in us looking at further? And if so, I can write a note to bring it up in a future work session.
Councilmember Mata?
I think before I personally vote or do anything on this, I want to understand. So essentially what he's saying, and based on the things that I've read, is that the youth activity account is one of the means that's going to fund the new professional stadium. But the youth activity account, in theory, should be going to programs and things that have to do with the youth. So the question that I need to understand is, will the new Everett Stadium be accessible to the youth for youth programming, or is it something that's really has nothing to do with the youth and they're just misusing funds. Either way, it seems like it's definitely something that it's not our issue to figure out. And I think it's important that we make sure that, the things in our community are funded appropriately for the youth activity account. So I just don't know enough to be prepared to do any type of voting on this.
Council President.
Just briefly, Assistant City Administrator Sordell, you served as our director in the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts Department. Do you have any background you can give to this fund? Because this is just the first time I'm really hearing about it.
Yes, this was a very important fund for us. It was mentioned tonight, the Meadowdale Playfields and the South Lynnwood Neighborhood Park. One of my questions would be, there was a cap on the use of these funds. This is a grant. The Youth Athletic Fund is a grant program. I believe the cap was $250,000 per project. So I'd want to go back and check the current status of this program, because there were caps on it. You couldn't apply for a grant of $7 million for a project. That just wasn't the case. So I think what I'd like to do and work with Director Faber is check on this youth athletic program, the fund, and see if it's changed and what are the restrictions and how much money is available per project. I think that would help you understand Mr. Martin's context and his premise here. So I think that's the first thing I would do with Director Faber.
Yeah, thank you for that insight.
Council Vice President.
Thank you. That was going to be my question too, because if you recall, I brought up Mr. Martin's emails at leadership a few weeks ago. Only it was with a different spin on the REIT monies. Now we're talking about the youth account. And so for me, without clearly giving direction to staff, where my curiosity goes, Mayor, is how much of this is ours? You know what I mean, for Lynnwood, if any, and then we could go from there, which is why I had brought it up, a few weeks ago was, do we have a stake in some of this monies? Can we be using some of this for us? Understanding what his bigger fight is in Everett, but it just brought to me the attention here. And so that's where my brain goes, is is some of this, should it be rightfully ours? When you see the Seahawks and the memo, you're like, hey, maybe, So that's where I'm at.
I would also note that I think it'd be a good question for us to investigate how much the legislature set aside for this program for the coming year. And I don't know that right now. So I think that's another piece of information we'd want to obtain.
Great. Yeah, Councilmember Owings.
So going back to the original question, I speak in favor of putting this on a further agenda to give us time for personal education on it, and as well as the city doing some education and study on it, and so that way we can actually discuss this more thoroughly with more information under our belt.
Yeah, we will, for sure. If nothing else, a memo. Since we've had a public comment, it's good to get clarification on this. Any other new business? Come on, we can. No? Shoot. Okay. Well, with that then, having fulfilled our agenda, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.